Thank you, and thanks for the applause. I don't normally get applause in my line of work. I don't get out a lot. I've spent the last 30 years in prison, and I've loved every minute of it, absolutely. I want to talk to you about, just ignore the title of the presentation, that will become obvious later. I want to talk to you about our model of a work in prison and how those models are people try across the world to replicate those models. So in any jurisdiction, there are normally two models that you would normally run a prison with, and every prison sits within the two extremes. The first model is the warehouse model, and the second model is what I call the factory process model. The warehouse, everybody knows what a warehouse is. You bring some material in and you store it for a while. Nothing really happens during that period of time. Some of it gets worse, and then at the end of the process, you take that material and you take it out at the other end. Nothing has changed. This is an example of a warehouse. It's one of our prisons. It's not a prison I have anything to do with. It's a prison on Sark, and if you go to Sark tomorrow, you'll see it. It doubles up as a bike rack. There's two cells in there, and it's a warehouse. Nothing really happens in there. People are held there for a while before they moved on. This is a factory, obviously, for those who've been in the factory. This factory makes cars, Skodas to be precise. And what happens in a factory is that raw material that I spoke about earlier comes into the factory, and then something happens. A transformation occurs, and the end product is completely different to what comes out at the other end. Something useful and something that can be used by society. And that's the factory process model. This is our factory, Guernsey prison. You will see that it is a very close community because it's got a very high fence around it. We have some residential units here and here, where the prisoners live. And it's very much a community. We have some workshops in this area. We have a horticulture site, which was there well before the prison. They just put a fence around the horticulture site and then built a prison inside it. It also has a healthcare centre, it has a gymnasium, and it has some activity areas. And this at the bottom is a high school, St Sampson's High School, right next to it, which I thought was a bit weird when I first got here, but I accept it now. It's just a high school next to a prison. Why not? So that's our prison. So what is the point of having a factory process in a prison? What we say to every prisoner is, you have to learn something when you come into prison. Doesn't matter what it is, learn something, right? And that could be formal qualifications. And we run formal qualifications ranging from basic literacy and numeracy right up to degree level courses for some prisoners who are able and capable of doing that through distance learning. We run vocational qualifications for prisoners who want to earn qualifications as they're working in the prison. We offer these in horticulture, in catering and hospitality, in woodwork and in recycling. The most important thing we do is try to instill a work ethic into prisoners. So what that means is that we try to reflect what happens in society. Prisoner gets up in the morning, he goes to work, he has lunch, and then he goes back to work in the afternoon. And then at tea time, he gets his tea, and then he has some time for association or for social activities. The social activities can happen during the day, and quite often we bring people in and we do other things as well with prisoners. We've got Terry Waite coming to give a talk in a couple of weeks' time, and a lot of that is done through our prison charity, which I'll talk about later. The backbone of the factory process is what we call sentence planning. Sentence planning is done in conjunction with our partners in probation, the probation service on the island, work with the prison, and we produce sentence plans for every prisoner that comes into the prison. The sentence plan is an assessment, it's an initial assessment process which identifies what that prisoner needs to get through the sentence and hopefully reduce offending. It might be that the sentence plan identifies offender behaviour work, work skills, educational skills, and we encourage prisoners to work with that plan, which is reviewed every 6 months. What happens at the end part of that sentence plan is it turns into a resettlement plan. So we start ticking boxes such as employment, accommodation, health, family work, and we start preparing that prisoner for release. You've often heard the term work in prison. Work in prison is part of the factory process, and it has two meanings. The first meaning of a work in prison is that it provides work and activities for prisoners. So prisoners aren't locked up for long hours during the day. We have 100% employment in the prison, and every prisoner works. Convicted prisoners must work, it's the law, they have to work. Remand prisoners don't have to work, but they always choose to work because the option is they stay in their cell if they don't. So that's the first meaning of a work in prison. The second meaning of a work in prison is a prison that actually works. A prison that reduces reoffending and stops people coming back. And that's done through, as I said before, through the sentence plan, through providing offender behaviour work and providing work and qualifications for prisoners. We also have a prison charity. Prison charity is called Creative Learning in Prison. It was set up 3 years ago from a grant from the Lloyds TSB Foundation. That grant has been spent and the charity is self-funding. What happens is that we do lots of community work around the island. You'll see some of the benches if you go around the island later, and some of the presentations I've already mentioned them. We work for the community. They provide the materials, the prisoners do the work, and we don't charge anything. We ask for a donation, we don't set a price, which is whatever people can afford. All of the money that comes back into the charity doesn't go to government, it goes back into providing activities for prisoners. It buys the type of activity that we wouldn't normally be able to afford through our prison budget. Remember I said we fund literacy and numeracy, but through creative learning we might fund creative writing. We fund the magazine project, we fund yoga, art and drama and photography. And all of these things work in helping prisoners motivate prisoners into more formal learning. So what is the evidence that this process works? The factory process is more expensive. It's obviously more expensive if you're doing all these things with prisoners rather than keeping them in a warehouse. When I took over as governor in 2012, the prison roll reached the highest point ever in the last 5.5 years. In August 2012, the prison roll reached 129. And then from that point onwards, something happened. A change occurred again, and prisoners stopped coming into prison and prisoners stopped coming back to prison. For whatever happened, there was a sort of a movement on the island, certainly with young people, to stop people coming into prison. And we were getting more and more success with prisoners who weren't coming back as well. The trend continued from 2013 right through to 2016 when we had a slight blip. We thought it was going to drop again, but we had a slight blip at the end of the year which took our percentage back up to 92%, which isn't that bad really. Today we have a prison roll of 82. The average so far this year is 86. That means we have 52 empty beds in our prison. 5.5 years ago we didn't have any empty beds. We didn't know where we were putting the next prisoner. If we looked at reoffending rates, these are this work has just been completed by the probation department, and I want to draw your attention to the central green column, which shows the reoffending rates for prisoners serving sentences less than 12 months. In the UK, 60% of offenders reoffend within a year who are serving less than 12 months. In Guernsey, in 2015 it was 21%, and in 2016 it was 18%. So huge differences in terms of our reoffending rates. Then if you compare that with what happens for prisoners serving over 12 months, the orange bar on this chart, 33% of prisoners in the UK, so a huge reduction in that, and 16% in Guernsey. And I haven't put the 2016 figure up yet. Now that's because With a prisoner serving over 12 months, they have more time to do the factory process, to spend more time in the factory, and there's more ability to change. Short-term prisoners don't really experience that. The other reason is that prisoners serving over 12 months are supervised on release by the probation department, and that clearly reaps benefits. So you've probably been trying to guess what our reoffending rate for Guernsey was 2016. These are prisoners who were released in 2015, monitored through 2016. 3%. That represents one prisoner who reoffended that year. One prisoner. Right. It's a common belief that we send more people to prison in Guernsey than anywhere else in the world. Prisoners often tell me that. If I was in the UK, I wouldn't be in prison. Well, you're not in the UK, you're in Guernsey, so you're in prison. You can see from there that 127 per 100,000. If we had 100,000 people on the island, we would probably be locking up about 127 people. In England and Wales, it's 146, and in Jersey, it's 152. But we do send people to prison on Guernsey for offences that they wouldn't normally attract a prison sentence in the UK. So if we were to address that, the numbers would be even lower. In Norway and the Scandinavian countries, things are even better, depending on the way you look at it. It's not better if you're a prison officer or a prison governor. It's better if socially for people who live there. They are closing prisons down and shutting prisons left, right, and centre because they haven't got the capacity anymore. So what do we do about short custodial sentences? We can see it doesn't work. Apart from the punitive measure of putting somebody in, the loss of liberty and putting somebody in prison, nothing really happens with them people, and the experiences has shown that we actually, those people reoffend at a higher rate than people who are in prison longer. We could introduce GPS monitoring as a system. The courts could use that when considering whether to send somebody to prison or not. Why not introduce a curfew? Why not have a home detention area? You have to be in the house by this time and you have to go to work every day, otherwise you go to prison. We could monitor our work release. We have about 10 to 12 prisoners in the community every day who are released every morning. They come back to prison every night. We could monitor those prisoners whilst they're out of the prison more effectively than we do now. Not that we have any, we do have lots of success with that. And we could introduce tagging for non-parole sentences. Non-parole sentences are under 15 months. There isn't really a motivator for prisoners to do anything because they're going to get out on their release date, doesn't matter what happens. But if we can introduce a short-term early release scheme that the prison and the probation service could make a decision on a prisoner who has got somewhere to live and has got employment and family, we might make a decision to release that prisoner earlier. So this would get rid of some of the short custodial sentences, and the element of supervision is attached to it, which is a huge success factor. Right, the subject of the presentation. When we set this system up 5.5 years ago, we didn't see this coming. We didn't think we would lose 52 prisoners. We didn't actually lose them, did we? They just didn't come back. I don't know where they've gone either. So what happens if we lose another 50? We've got a maximum capacity of 130, and it is a bit of a concern. Certainly, if you work in a prison, and as I said earlier, it's a bit of a concern if you work as a prison officer. So we need to do something else. This is an idea, and it's an idea that I would like to see happen. What it would need would be probably some legislation, and it would probably need it would definitely need political agreement from the different committees that were concerned with it. The problem is that we are the only secure custodial facility on the island. It's a multi-purpose facility which holds females, males, young people, young offenders, immigration detainees. And why can't it be used, if the word prison is a problem, why can't it be used for another purpose? We call it a custodial facility. The idea is to bring in a medium secure psychiatric unit. So why couldn't we incorporate a psychiatric unit at the prison? The high cost of keeping off-island placements in the UK on this island is unbelievable. There's a large amount of money spent every year on 35 to 40 patients in the UK. You've all got a figure in your head now. Does it match this figure? Because that's what we spend every year, right? Or you couldn't bring all of those people back to the island because some of them need intensive specialist units in the UK, but you could bring some back, and you could have a therapeutic unit in the prison staffed by mental health professionals, supported by prison staff, using the spaces that we've got, rather than spending a fortune sending people off island. They have families on the island who have to visit the UK to visit them as well. We could bring some back. For example, £1 million nearly is spent on 5 medium secure places in the UK. 5 people in the UK who need that structure, who need that responsibility of living a better life in a therapeutic environment. That's the idea. Let's see how far we get with it. Because if we can't do that in Guernsey, we can't do it anywhere. Thank you very much.